Abraham Lincoln's first draft of the Emancipation Proclamation. July 22nd, 1862. In pursuance of the sixth section of the Act of Congress entitled An Act to Suppress Insurrection and to Punish Treason and Rebellion, to seize and confiscate property of rebels, and for other purposes, approved July 17, 1862, and which act and the joint resolution explanatory thereof are herewith published. I, Abraham Lincoln, President of the United States, do hereby proclaim to and warn all persons within the contemplation of said sixth section to cease participating in, aiding, countenancing, or abetting the existing rebellion or any rebellion against the government of the United States, and to return to their proper allegiance to the United States, on pain of the forfeitures and seizures as within and by said sixth section provided. And I hereby make known that it is my purpose, upon the next meeting of Congress, to again recommend the adoption of a practical measure for tendering pecuniary aid to the free choice or rejection of any and all states which may then be recognizing and practically sustaining the authority of the United States, and which may then have voluntarily adopted, or thereafter may voluntarily adopt, gradual abolishment of slavery within such state or states, that the object is to practically restore thenceforward to be maintained the constitutional relation between the general government and each and all the states wherein that relation is now suspended or disturbed, and that for this object the war as it has been will be prosecuted, and as a fit and necessary military measure for effecting this object, I, as Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States, do order and declare that on the first day of January in the year of our Lord 1863, all persons held as slaves within any state or states wherein the constitutional authority of the United States shall not then be practically recognized, submitted to, and maintained, shall then, thenceforward, and forever be free. Was the Emancipation Proclamation a military strategy or an attempt to rid the nation of slavery? An argument can be made that it did both, but in examining the first draft of the Emancipation Proclamation, we can see that Lincoln certainly used it for legal purposes. First off, it is a call to disarm the rebellion. The issue of slavery was not the only motive for drafting the proclamation, which is contrary to what is often thought of in regards to the emancipation policy. In fact, it is the second paragraph in a three-paragraph statement. Third, the proclamation was about restoring the relationship between the United States government and individual states in the Union. This legal document the President drafted delivers official orders. I, Abraham Lincoln, President of the United States, do hereby proclaim to and warn all persons within the contemplation of said sixth section to cease participating in, aiding, countenancing, or abetting the existing rebellion, or any rebellion against the government of the United States, and to return to their proper allegiance to the United States on pain of the forfeitures and seizures. This is not simply a document designed to free the slaves, but to end the rebellion. When he said, on pain of the forfeitures and seizures, he made it clear that rebellion would be penalized. This was also a nod to the Second Confiscation Act, which Congress passed to allow forfeiture of property and liberation of slaves. Lincoln was determined not to allow rebellion to divide the country. The war itself left parties to ponder its purpose. Historian James Oates noted Democrats were demanding that Republicans answer the question, what is the object of the war? But Republicans turned the tables and demanded that Democrats answer a very different question. Shall the American Republic be destroyed, or shall slavery perish? 2 years after the first draft was written, Lincoln, a Republican, confirmed that his primary interest was the preservation of the Union. Right or wrong, I assumed this ground and now avow to it. I could not feel that, to the best of my ability, I had even tried to preserve the Constitution, if, to save slavery or any minor matter, I should permit the wreck of the government, country, and Constitution altogether. Lincoln did not want to be president that would allow the nation to split in half for any reason, despite his passion to end slavery. In fact, the proclamation did not contain strong language regarding the abolition of slavery. In the text he said, "And I hereby make known that it is my purpose upon the next meeting of Congress to again recommend the adoption of a practical measure for tendering pecuniary aid to the free choice or rejection of any and all states, which may then be recognizing and practically sustaining the authority of the United States," which is not the strong statement we have come to expect from Lincoln. What he said is that there will be a financial reward to those who are in compliance with the regulations set forth by the government of the United States. He continued the statement with, "which may then have voluntarily adopted or thereafter may voluntarily adopt the gradual abolishment of slavery within such state or states." He is not as definitive as expected, given his recognition as a great emancipator. Rather than demand the immediate emancipation of all slaves, he understood that abolition would be gradual and voluntary. Realistically, slavery was doomed for dissolution inevitably, so it is not a firm demand to proclaim that it end gradually. Oates said, "Early on, Abraham Lincoln talked vaguely about putting slavery on the course of ultimate extinction." This statement indicates that he understood slavery would face its demise. Historian Eric Foner supported this by saying, "Contrary to legend, Lincoln did not free the nearly 4 million slaves with the stroke of his pen. It, the Emancipation Proclamation, had no bearing on slaves in the 4 border states, since they were not in rebellion. All told, it left perhaps 750,000 slaves in bondage." The greater theme of the proclamation is the fight to bring seceding states back into the fold, which Lincoln explained in the second half of the above statement. That the object is to practically restore thenceforward to be maintained the constitutional relation between the general government and each and all of the states, wherein that relation is now suspended or disturbed. His commitment to the government and to keep the nation as one is evident in the wording, "the constitutional relation between the general government and each and all of the states." He didn't want the seceding states to form their own nation with their own constitution. He didn't want to acquiesce on slavery. He wanted to make sure that the nation was one, which could only be achieved with a Union victory. He even went so far as to say, "And as a fit and necessary military measure for effecting this object, I, as Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States, do order that and declare that all persons held as slaves within any state or states wherein the constitutional authority of the United States shall not then be practically recognized, submitted to, and maintained, shall then thenceforward and forever be free." This seems evident that the proclamation is a military order with recognition of the rights of slaves. His statement, wherein the constitutional authority, limits the reach of the order to the North that recognizes the Constitution, and not the seceding states unless Union occupied. In fact, freeing slaves was important for the war cause. Foner said in his last public address delivered in April 1865, he said that in reconstructing Louisiana, and by implication other southern states, he would prefer that limited black suffrage be implemented. He singled out that the very intelligent, educated free blacks, and those who serve our cause as soldiers, as most worthy. Oakes notes that Union forces would entice slaves to freedom under the umbrella of the Confiscation Act, however, only in territories they occupy. The Emancipation Proclamation lifted the ban on enticement. Thereafter, Northern soldiers went on to those farms, announced to the slaves that they had been emancipated, and actively encouraged able-bodied men to enlist in the Union Army. The final Emancipation Proclamation confirmed this, and I further declare and make known that such persons, freed slaves of suitable condition, will be received into the armed service of the United States to garrison forts, positions, station, and other places, and to man vessels of all sorts in said service. The Emancipation Proclamation freed slaves. However, limits did exist. In a close reading of the document, it becomes clear that the purpose of the proclamation was to end the war. 3 variables were required to achieve this result. First, the rebellion had to come to a close. Second, slavery, the impetus of the war, had to be addressed. Lastly, the country had to be united, oftentimes converting involuntary servitude to voluntary service.